Hello and welcome back. Okay, question. Is Pancho Villa dead? Yes, he is. He's not alive. Pancho Villa is dead. Do you know who Pancho Villa was? Do you know where Pancho Villa lived? Does the name Pancho Villa ring a bell or suena? I know some of you know perfectly well who Pancho Villa was. And I know some of you don't know who Pancho Villa was. And I know for some of you, the name Pancho Villa doesn't ring a bell. And for other people, you don't know who he was, but the name rings a bell. Now, of course, with Pancho, you automatically think in America. What part? Probably Mexico. Now, Pancho Villa, is he still alive or is he dead? Did he die a long time ago? Or did he die recently? Or is he still alive? Is he still alive? Pancho Villa. Question, is Pancho Villa dead? Yes, he is. Now, do you know where he was born? No, you don't know where he was born? Ask me, where was Pancho Villa born? He was born in Mexico. Do you know in what part of Mexico he was born? You don't know? Was he born in the south of Mexico? Was he born in the north of Mexico? Was he born on the Pacific coast near Acapulco? Was he born on the Atlantic, or on the Gulf of Mexico near Veracruz or Mérida in Mexico, by the way, or near Tampico? Where was he born? Was he born in Mexico City, in the center of Mexico? Where was he born? Well, Pancho Villa was born in the north. I don't know what, maybe in Hermosillo, maybe in Chihuahua. I don't remember. But he was born in the north of Mexico. The area that's it's like a desert. It's very dry. The south of Mexico is semi-tropical, or very tropical, in fact, in some areas. But the north is almost a desert, okay? And Pancho Villa was born there. Now, do you know what century he was born in? Do you know what? Cuando aquí la pregunta es, do you know? Y el resto de la frase va como si fuera en afirmativo. Do you know what century Pancho Villa was born in? Was born in. Pongo la preposición in al final. ¿Sabéis en qué siglo nació? Do you know what century? 20th century fox. Do you know in what century? Fijaos en la pronunciación de century. Cen, como si fuera un S en una C al principio. Century, como el inicio de la palabra iglesia. Church. Century. La T-U, la T más la U, las dos letritas estas, tienen sonido normalmente de chu. Como chufla. Century, Portugal. Picture. Cuadra una pared. There's a picture on the wall. All right. Fortune. Fortuna. Fortune. Afortunadamente. Empezando por F. Fortunately. Now, question. What century was Pancho Villa born in? Well, he was born in the 19th century. So he was born more than 100 years ago. Okay. Because 100 years ago was 1908. 1908, 19-0. Decimos el cero como una O. 1908. So, in 1908, was Pancho Villa still alive? In 1908, was Pancho Villa still alive, or was he dead? In 1908, Pancho Villa was still alive. Okay. How much longer did he live? How much longer? How much more time? Pero solemos decir how much longer. ¿Cuánto tiempo más vivió? Starting in 1908? Well, I think he died in 1923, the same year in which my father was born. My father was born in the same year in which Pancho Villa died. So, if Pancho Villa was still alive in 1908 and he died in 1923, how much longer did he live? How much longer did he live? Well, he lived for 13 plus 2, 15 more years. He lived for 15 more years. Fijaos, en español diríais, vivió 15 años más. En inglés decimos, vivió 15 más años. He lived 15 more years after that. But how old was he in 1908? I don't really know. I have no idea. But I think he was probably around 35 years old. Pancho Villa. And when did Pancho Villa become famous? Well, it depends. Famous where? When did Pancho Villa become famous? Well, it depends on where. In Mexico, in Spain, in the United States, in the world? Okay. Is he still famous today? If you've never heard of him, he's not really famous. If his name rings a bell, he's a little famous. Or if you know perfectly well who he was, then Pancho Villa is still famous for some people. Now, was he famous in 1908? In Mexico, yes, but not in the United States or in Spain. Did he ever become famous in the United States? Yes, he did. He became very famous in the United States. Is he still famous today? Famous. Fijaos en la pronunciación. Fe. No es famous, como un español leyéndolo diría fonéticamente. What's the first letter in the English alphabet? A. What's the second letter in this word? A. Famous. Y O-U-S al final se pronuncia como us. Para nosotros, for us, famous. Para nosotros es famoso. He is famous for us. Rima. Okay, famous. Y la O-U-S al final de las palabras siempre tienen sonido de us, como para nosotros, for us. Montañoso, mountainous. All right. Famous. Nervioso, nervous. All right. Infame, infamous. Okay, so Pancho Villa was famous. He became very famous in the United States, and he is still famous today. But he didn't become famous. He didn't become famous in the United States until the First World War. Until the First World War, la Primera Guerra Mundial. As you know, as you should know, if you know a little bit about history, the First World War broke out, se puede decir, in 1914. October 1914 was the beginning of the First World War. Okay, and it began in Europe, basically, not in Africa, basically not in Asia or not in the New World, in the Americas. It started, but the United States became involved. The United States became involved because the United States was helping England, well, the United Kingdom, in their fight against the Axis powers, against Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So there were three countries initially fighting against the Germans and the Austrians, or the Austro-Hungarians. And those three countries were the United Kingdom, France, and Russia, under the Romanovs. Okay, under the Romanovs, yeah. And in 1914 and in 1915 and even in 1916, the United States didn't want, or at least it seemed that the United States didn't want to get involved in the First World War. The United States, many of the politicians and many of the people wanted to remain isolated, and they preferred isolation from the problems in Europe. Because you see, for Americans, still today, to a certain degree, but especially 100 years ago, the last thing many Americans wanted to do was to get involved in the wars in Europe. Because in Europe, wars had been going on for 1,500 years, since the fall of the Roman Empire in 475 AD. Okay, between the wars were taking place every century. There were wars. And most American people didn't want to get involved in Europe's problems, okay? But because of technology, of communication, transportation, etc., at that time, at the turn of the century, in the year 1900, 1905, 1910, the world was getting closer. Globalization was taking place even at that time. And so the United States was involved intimately in trade. Trade, escrito trade, que es el comercio, entre países en este caso, trade. Trade es una palabra súper importante en inglés, trade. Su origen viene del concepto de trueque. Yo te doy esta taza y tú me das, pues, café para llenarla. No hay dinero involucrado. That's trade. I will trade this for that. I will trade this microphone for your cookies or your cereal or your biscuits. Okay, I'll trade. Okay, but trade also es comercio, porque estamos comerciando, en este caso sin dinero, pero comerciando al fin y al cabo. And so, trade se ha elevado a ser una palabra muy importante en términos macroeconómicos, en lenguaje, en la jerga de los economistas. The trade balance, la balanza comercial de un país. Does Spain, for example, Spain, does Spain export more or import more? Well, if Spain imports more than it exports, Spain has a trade balance, a negative trade balance, okay? Now, if Spain exports more than it imports, Spain has a trade balance in its favor, and we call this a trade surplus, superávit comercial, okay? A trade surplus, okay? Not a trade deficit, trade, okay? Now, the United States, because there was so much international trade, became closer and closer again to Europe. So it was not so easy for the American people to say, we remain isolationists, we don't want to get involved in the problems, in the wars, the constant wars and fighting in Europe. Let them solve their own problems and not splash us, salpicar nosotros. But it was not so easy. And besides, Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, at that time, made the decision together with his cabinet, su gabinete, sus ministros, his cabinet secretaries, and many people in Congress to help the United Kingdom, to help Great Britain in their struggle against the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians. And the German U-boats, the German submarines, sank some of the American ships crossing the Atlantic, and it sank a passenger ship, a luxury liner, a luxury ship, similar to the Titanic. They sank the Lusitania, and about 1,000 people or more died. And that's when the Congress of the United States decided to declare war on Germany. Now, and so the United States entered the war late 1916, early 1917, in that period of time. And very quickly the war ended, because when the Americans finally reached France and Belgium, where there was a stalemate, there was practically no activity. A stalemate means un parón, because it was impossible. New soldiers came in massive numbers from the United States, and that changed the war. And in 1918, November, the war ended. Okay, but what's interesting, and probably you don't know, is that Mexico declared war on the United States. Mexico was an ally. Mexico was an ally. Fijaos cómo lo digo. Un aliado. ¿Eres mi aliado en la lucha contra el inglés? Are you my ally? Te necesito como aliado, ayudándome a vencer el tema del inglés. I need you as, not like. I need you as an ally. Si dijera te necesito like an ally, significaría que necesito como si fueras un aliado, pero no lo eres. As means lo eres. Like means similar a. I need you as an ally against the English language. Now, Mexico, during the First World War, was an ally of Germany and Austria. I bet you didn't know that. ¿A que no sabías eso? I bet you didn't know that. And Pancho Villa, el famoso del principio de todo este programa, Pancho Villa, with about 100 or 1,000, I don't know, of his bandidos, because he was a bandit, they crossed the border and attacked a small town in the United States and killed 2 or 3 people, poor people, the last thing people expected in a normal, peaceful farming community, comunidad agrícola, I think it was in New Mexico or Arizona, to see Mexican bandits coming in to kill them. And so the United States declared war on Mexico too and sent General Pershing, who later went to France, down to find Pancho Villa, and they never found him. Because Pancho Villa, similar to Al-Qaeda now, they go into the mountains and you can't find them. Okay, so Pancho Villa became famous in the United States. Now, who was Pancho Villa? ¿Quién diablos fue esta persona? Who in the world was Pancho Villa? Well, for the people who don't know, he was simply a bandit. Un bandido famoso mexicano, like Curro Jimenez in Spain, but a bit different. Because I think Curro Jimenez in Spain only had a small group of friends and followers. Pancho Villa created practically an army. He was successful, he was popular, he was admired by many people. He was a killer, a murderer, but he was very successful. And he became a hero, héroe, for many people, especially the poor people in northern Mexico. And his popularity coincided with the beginning of the Mexican Revolution and the overthrow, el derrocamiento, of Porfirio Díaz, the Mexican dictator for many years. Porfirio Díaz had been the dictator of Mexico, and he was overthrown. And you probably have heard, you have heard of Emiliano Zapata, Viva Zapata, okay? Who was a peasant, escrito peasant. Significa paisano, pero realmente significa bracero o significa campesino pobre. Es a peasant. Viene de la misma raíz que la palabra paisano. A peasant. And he was a peasant in the south of Mexico, which is completely different from the north. And he became a leader of the poor people in the south. And his leadership also coincided with the overthrow, el derrocamiento, repito, the overthrow of Porfirio Díaz. And so the Mexican Revolution started. And when a revolution starts, many times it starts with good motives. Always, practically, revolutions start with good motives to change things because things are unsustainable, okay? So finally, boom, you have a revolution. But revolutions almost always get out of hand. And to get out of hand is perder el control. Se desmadran, como decís aquí. They get out of hand. They get out of control. And then they become radical. They radicalize, like in the French Revolution with el terror del 93-94. And so bad things start to happen. And this happened in the Mexican Revolution too. And many people were killed. Many famous politicians and leaders and heroes were assassinated by others, etc. And Emilio Zapata was killed during this period too. But he and Pancho Villa met in Mexico City during one of the periods of the Mexican Revolution. There's a photograph. It's a very famous photo showing the two famous heroes. One's a bandit, and the other is simply a leader of the peasants in Mexico. Okay, more ideological. And they met, and the rest is history. But getting back to the story, is Pancho Villa dead? Yes, he is. He died in 1923. I'm surprised that he survived so many years. But he died, and the Americans never found him. And finally, he was killed in 1923. All right, next question. Can a jumbo jet fly around the world without refueling? No. Can any plane fly around the world without refueling? I don't know. Probably. The world, the Earth, what's the circumference? What's the circumference of the Earth? What's the diameter of the Earth? Do you know? The circumference of the Earth, I think, is 40,000 kilometers. 40,000 kilometers is the circumference of the Earth. Okay? The idea, the decision, who made the decision that the Earth is 40,000 kilometers? Well, this decision was made in France after the French Revolution and before the ascent of Napoleon Bonaparte during a period which we call el directorio or directorado. I don't know how to say it in Spanish. In English we say the directorate. And it was a period when France was cooling off, enfriándose, cooling off from the French Revolution. But the government was not strong. And the government had a lot of problems with the people and with the military. And that's one of the reasons that Napoleon Bonaparte became so important and later so powerful in France. But that's not the story today. The story is if a plane or in this case specifically a jumbo jet, un jumbo, un 747, can fly around the world without refueling. It can't. To refuel, fuel is combustible, fuel. Se escribe fuel, y aquí en español he oído mucho es fuel, pero cuidado, en inglés no es fuel, it's few. Como unos pocos. I have a few objects, there are a few objects on the table. Few, a few. El fuel, fuel, fuel is combustible. There are different types of fuel. Gasoline is a fuel. Diesel fuel, diesel, gasoleo, that's a fuel, all right? There are liquid fuels, solid fuels, coal. El carbón realmente es una especie de combustible. Tiene combustión. It can burn and it produces energy. Fuel, all right? Another, can it fly around the world without refueling? A jumbo jet can't, sin recargar combustible, without refueling. No, it can't. Is there any plane, supersonic jet, that can fly around the world without refueling? I don't know. Now there are jets that fly at Mach 3, Mach 4. They fly 4 times faster than the speed of sound. That's 4,000 kilometers per hour, perhaps. Even then, that would take them 10 hours to fly around the Earth. And I don't think they can do it. I honestly don't think that any flying object, any flying object powered by fuel, un globo sí, puede hacerlo, but it's not so easy either, can fly around the world without refueling, because the world is 40,000 kilometers, all right? Because those thinkers, the people in Paris who created the metric system, they created el sistema métrico, was created in around 1795, 1796, 1797, in that period, and they created the metric system, and they based 1 meter. I think it's un 4 millón parte de la circunferencia de la Tierra, the circumference of the Earth. So 1 meter is 1/4 millionth, I think, or 1/40,000th, 1/400th, I don't remember, of the circumference of the Earth. And the circumference of the Earth was decided at 40,000 kilometers. Recargar combustible, to refuel, all right, to fuel, all right, energy. Sometimes we need fuel to produce energy. Fuel, the most important fuel, of course, is fossil fuels. Combustibles fósiles, fossil fuels. And that comes from basically oil, coal, and natural gas. Natural gas is basically from oil and coal. All right, so I don't think a jumbo jet can fly around the Earth without fueling. The new 380, the Airbus 380, the double-decker plane. Can that plane fly around the Earth, around the world completely, without making a stop in order to refuel? Okay. Some American jets, reactores americanos and europeos también, can fly around the world without landing, yes, but they refuel in midair. There's a fuel plane that comes up and they connect and they add fuel. It's a bit dangerous, but they do it all the time. So some planes can fly around the world without landing, but not without refueling. Fuel, all right. Fuel for your car, gasoline. The gas tank, el depósito de combustible. All right. Petrol tank, dirían los británicos. To put gas in your car, to put petrol in your car. When you need gasoline, you go to a gas station, or to a service station, or to a petrol station, or to a filling station. Estación de rellenado o de llenado, filling station. There are 4 ways of saying gasolinera. The 2 most common is the American-Canadian is gas station, gasoline station, se puede decir, pero decimos gas station, y los británicos y irlandeses dicen petrol station. Pero también existe service station, que cubre todo. Siempre tienes razón con service station, or filling station. And when you need gas, you stop at a gas station. When you need petrol, you stop at a petrol station. All right? Okay, I have to stop. They're telling me I don't have any more time, but I'll be back in just a few minutes to continue, so don't go too far away. Okay, thank you.